My name is Eitan Chatayat and welcome to I'm That podcast, where I get to talk to some pretty incredible people. Some are friends and colleagues, some are clients, and some are people I haven't even met yet. On I'm That, we'll hear from them about who they are, what they do and why, stuff they love or hate, mistakes they've made, victories they've had. They're all known for something, but by the time we're through, the hope is they'll have revealed some things we didn't know about them. Our talk may be deep, profound, funny, who knows really. One thing for sure, it'll be interesting and honest. So if you're up for that, thank you for joining me on I'm That, and here we go. Rose McGowan is globally recognized for inspiring millions to use their voice. A catalyst and driving force for change, her name is synonymous with the Me Too movement. A Time Magazine Person of the Year, she's also the first woman to be named GQ's Man of the Year. And despite powerful opposition, in 2014, she also founded #RoseArmy, coining the term cultural reset. She also authored an empowering book, Brave, a New York Times bestseller, and the audiobook was nominated Audible's Top 10 of the Year out of 1.6 million titles. Leaving behind a lauded acting career, her directorial debut, Dawn, was nominated for Sundance Grand Jury Prize. And in her pursuit of finding creative ways to help others, she most recently crafted a sonic journey in the form of an anxiety-soothing concept album called Planet 9, designed to elevate moods. Rose resides in Mexico, where she continues her personal goal of making the world 10% better, one person or 1 million people at a time. I'm so excited to welcome you to I'm That.
Thank you so much for having me.
How are you doing?
I've been really enjoying living in Mexico, where I live. I live in the Mexican Caribbean, and it's just a special place. It's a really heart-centered land, and it's given me a lot of, it's kind of like the antidote to my fight.
What are you doing in Mexico?
My father lived on the west coast of Mexico. He had a house there for many years in a little fishing village, and it was like his safe place. And and I was in Norway giving a speech when northern Italy got locked down for COVID, and it was like the first place they got locked down. And I just thought, Mexico flashed in my head, and I was living in London. And I had to be for a very big trial in New York for a couple of months. And I was quite done with, I got sent to, I'm sure we'll maybe get into that, but I got sent to the US when I was like 10 and a half. And I feel like I did my time there.
And you like Mexico?
I do. There's a Wild West aspect to it that I find quite energizing. It is, but it is not how it's portrayed, largely. I mean, I'm sure in some areas it is, but it's not 24/7. And for some reason, Hollywood, they always do these things like Narcos, and everything about Mexico is like drug-based when it's like in media, or migrants trying to cross the border. And it doesn't say, oh, Mexico City, they have 160 museums. It's one of the most artistic and cultural spots in the world. They don't, if you go on Airbnb and just look in like people's apartments that they're renting, their style, it's like Italy with a little more flavor. I mean, their design sense is so spectacular. And then just the colors and the vibrancy. And it's a really different happiness index than the US, and it's judged against that a lot. There's a saying here, no pasa nada, no big deal, no pasa nada. And they just kind of get on with it. And it's not like corruption for the people. If you get pulled over, you can get out of it, usually, for a couple thousand pesos, which is like maybe $100. But I just think, would I rather have that money going to that policeman's family to feed them that night? Or would I rather go, to the city of Los Angeles parking district? So you kind of like make peace with it. And I feel like every place is super corrupt, obviously, governments, things like that, and the halls of power. And but in the States, you really have to be a millionaire or billionaire to be able to buy justice. And here, it's kind of like corruption for the people.
You seem pretty full of life right now. You seem like you're so animated and happy.
Yeah, I mean, I had the public, if they know anything about me, if they saw me like in the last, like during like 2017 to like 2020 kind of, I was portrayed a lot in the media as like very angry, very severe, and I had to be. I was angry. I mean, righteous anger, and I find it moves mountains. And I had to scare people. I had to scare them into, especially my enemies, and the people that were coming at me.
Well, I have a confession to make, and that is that I have a very selfish agenda today. You and I have been in touch for around a month, and we've been speaking pretty much every day, just really getting to know each other. The relationship kind of happened by accident, and you know that I didn't know too much about you.
I love it.
When I met you, and I've grown very fond of you. And my agenda here is to really, as comfortable as you feel doing it, is to just really show people who you are, because the person that I found that you are is very sincere, very genuine, very honest. You've got a shit ton of fight in you, but just as much fight as there is in you, there's vulnerability, and there's love, and there's compassion, and there's art. And you're right, the way that the media has portrayed you, and the way that in many ways you've portrayed yourself, is I want people to feel you the way that I've felt you, and my wife, who is also, you've spoken to, and even my children who you've spoken to.
I like it. Thank you. I am it's hard. Anybody that is in the media that they, and I'm sure you've experienced this when they soundbite you, or, it's people think that's what it is all the time, if they think about you at all. And it's been a joy getting to know you, and by extension, your lovely family, and your ethics, and your drive. And something that I know that is, no, I'm a pretty jolly person. I don't know why. I don't really have any reason to be, except for that I am. And even in the darkest times, gallows humor has served me, and always will. But I generally like, anger to me is just another brush in your emotional paint box tool. It's not normal, really, culturally, to see someone like, and it's not fun either. Like, I don't like it. I'd rather be like laying in a field staring at the sky. That was my dream my whole life. I just wanted to be like one with nature and alone with my thoughts, and just happiness. But there is a lot of happiness in my life, and now and more steadily. I am for the first time in my life, honestly, this last year, learning about steady happiness, if you will. I mean, it always goes away at moments or things like that, but and I have moments of depression. I've always struggled with that. Even in the darkest times when I felt like I had giant boulders laying on top of me, I always craned my head to see the view and to see the beauty and to find it wherever I could, because that was enervating and energizing, and that's what kept me going.
Well, that's a brilliant segue for my next question, which is, traditionally, I start the show. I mean, we're way past the traditional opening sentence, but that's fine. I'm going to ask you a question. You think about it, and then just complete the sentence, okay? And we'll just take it from there. I'm that
human. I am that human. Yeah.
Tell me.
I thought a lot about it, because, you do ask that question on your show. And at first, it was kind of like, I'm that bitch. I'm that bitch, which is fitting. In general, people really lean into the man-woman of it all, or the other, everything that goes under the sun with the spectrum of gender and sexuality and all that. But I find that it's almost, I think, easier to solve a lot of our problems as humans if we back up and see ourselves as human first and others before we see ourselves as the secondary parts. So I am that human. Yeah. I scare because I care. That's from Monsters, Inc.
Yeah,
tagline.
And you say it. You say that.
Yeah.
You scare.
It's funny.
Well, what does that mean? I scare because I care.
I scare because I care. I care so much that it's annoying to me. I don't know why I'm driven. And we were talking a bit about this before we started recording. Like, for me, when I was an actress, I was very, there's the contingent that loves you, there's the contingent that is completely unaware of you, and there's the contingent that really hates you. And just like anything, it's human nature. The bad thing overrides the good. And like I said, people had websites about how fat I was when I was very skinny, like just like a lot of like hatred just for, I was a very beautiful young woman, and that either attached envy or hate to it. I'm not really sure. But I kind of thought, well, if they hate me, I might as well give them a reason to. I might as well upset the apple cart. And for me, society had, an awful lot of thoughts about me for years. And I had no way of kind of talking back or even having a conversation. So when I say scared because I care, I compulsively care. It's my whole life I've been this way. And it is, and my activism was very private until it had to be public. I never, sometimes, like if I see someone mistreating their animal, I am totally fine with going up and reading it and going up against the person doing it to save the animal and scare them as much as I can because I care about the animal. It's kind of like sometimes you just have to do what's right. And it does make people mad because a lot of people either disagree or hate anybody that speaks up. Well, I don't know.
Listen, I mean, I'd say the vast majority of Americans know who you are, and a lot of other people, of course. But for the people that don't, you went through something very painful. I don't want to say what it is. I'd rather hear it from you because I don't want to put words in your mouth. And I'll let you kind of, if you'd like to just explain what that was in as much or as little detail as you'd like. But that became very, very, very public. Mm-hmm. Can you maybe just tell us a little bit about that?
For those of you who don't know anything about me or maybe know a little or whatever it is, something very bad happened to me, and it happens to many women and many boys and many everybody. And for me, when I was sexually assaulted, it was kind of like by the head rapist in charge. I'll put it that way. Like somebody who had so much power, was so tied into the Democratic Party, and his name was Harvey Weinstein. I don't like his name. I don't like him. And it didn't have to be that way, but this person ate really special people. It was like he consumed, and it was a daily appointment for it. And he had all the big agencies in Hollywood like funneling him victims, and then they would use it as leverage to get their star clients or director clients jobs. So it's literally the definition of human trafficking. And in my case, I had a female manager that, got $1 million a year job with him afterwards, after setting me up, essentially, from what I know. And there's evidence to back that up. It's all been. So what I did was I tricked him back in the day into giving me $100,000 as a settlement, but in trade for refusing to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. Because I said, if I hear of you doing this to another girl, I will come for you. And I am a person of my word. And through much destruction of any career I had, I was already in the middle of my second film for his company. I had never met him. It's a 10 a.m. breakfast meeting. I was quite lucky in a way, that it was so clear cut that it wasn't my fault. It wasn't like I was on a date and there were drinks involved and then it went south. I didn't have to unpack that. It was so clear cut. Just 1 minute your life is one way, the next is another. And, I always say we can become really brilliant 2.0s. We can become all of that after, a big part of you gets stolen, but it doesn't have to be that way. We shouldn't have to be. We should allow our children and anybody, to be 1.0s, to be who they were. Because that was it. I was pretty great.
Yes.
Sorry.
You're still great.
Thank you. It's just a different, So I found out quickly that he was making $1 million payments to girls he'd hurt, and in exchange for signing a non-disclosure agreement where they couldn't talk, they couldn't tell their therapist, they couldn't tell their dad, they couldn't tell their husband, whatever it was, their best friends, they had to just bottle it up. And I'm like, no. So through his greed and playing dumb, I tricked him into just a small amount of money, which I donated most to a rape crisis center, and used I think $15,000 for therapy. I thought if I just go to therapy, that'll fix me. I'll be like who I was before. And it doesn't really work that way. So I set about after immediately being blacklisted in Hollywood. And I was like on the cover of magazines. And what do you do when you're already well known? Like, what job do you get if people are chasing you down the street to get your autograph? Where do you go? You're stuck. So at that point, TV and movies weren't really intertwined. They were quite separate, and he didn't have any sway in that sector. And I was offered a big job on a TV show. I'd never done a TV show, certainly not an hour long, which is actually like the hardest job in show business, because you're doing half a movie in about 8 days instead of 2 months. Heavy workload. And so I wound up on a show called Charmed, and doing that for 5 very long years. And it brought a lot of people joy and comfort, and the idea that they too had magic in them. It wasn't I've never loved fantasy. It's just, I just don't love it. I guess my life has been so strange. Fantasy doesn't seem that fantastical to me in a lot of ways. And so I set about, by hook or by crook, I realized if I did this TV show, it was already a hit when I joined, that I would then, if I kept just enough of a public profile, at some point when it came time, I would have access to cameras and microphones to strike. And for years, society wasn't ready. It was too, and then Trump came to power. And it's almost like he, through his kind of gross words with, there was like him on the bus talking about women.
You can say
grab him by the P word. I don't love that word. So like grab him by the P word, stuff like that. And people are like, whoa, that's sexual harassment. Whoa, that's it. Yes, it is. And it's almost like he helped in a bizarre way articulate it for people who'd been hearing either women and other victims complain about it for years. You're like, yeah, that's what it sounds like. That's what it looks like. That's what it is, And because Weinstein was so in bed with the Clintons and Obama, like Obama's daughter, the article I had a big hand in setting up in the New York Times to expose him came out. And you don't think these people do reconnaissance. You don't think they have Secret Service and files and everything. And he was, their entree into Hollywood, these politicians, and he had deep, deep protection. And so I do go up against the Democratic Party a lot, because I find them, especially the sacrosanct ones, very objectionable. And I find them to be, by and large, like purveyors of evil, I'll say, and sponsors of it.
You're not talking about Democrats, meaning the people that support the Democrats. You're talking about the actual upper echelons of the Democratic Party, the people who are running the Democratic Party, right?
The top. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the people. And when I say, when I go up against them, it's not like, for me, for some reason, I find Republicans and I have a very different belief system than most of them, I think. I am for everyone pretty much living their life as they want to and being just left alone, and nobody being able to tell you, like, as long as you're not hurting anybody else, go for it. But at least to me, they're like, yeah, this is what we're like. This is how we do it. And this is what we're about. I'm like, okay, I can work with that. My brain can work with that. But when there's such a disconnect between the public image of what these elite Democrats are and do, and the reality of it that I know, because I've dealt with it. If Hillary Clinton had won the presidency, I wouldn't be here having this conversation with you. Not a chance.
Let me ask you a question. Something that we've talked about before, and you probably talked about in interviews. You've used the word deprogramming. How do you try and show them that what they are being told, and I'm not talking about Democrats, okay? Let's not talk about Democrats.
Everybody.
Everybody, because I think also it's important that people understand that, because you're not anti-Democrat and you're not anti-Republican. You're, like you said, I'm
pro-human.
Yeah,
I'm pro-freedom.
Right, I'm that human. So, but how do you explain to someone that what they believe is true might not be true? It's difficult because they believe it's true. And so there's this notion of deprogramming, which you've spoken about. How do you see that working? Because that's tough. And there's the media, And there are deceptive people. I mean, on both sides. And not, by the way, it goes way beyond Democrats and Republicans. I mean, I live in Israel. Every country has their, their left and their right, their upper and their lower, their, liberals and their conservatives. How do you do that?
I've read most documentaries that I've seen on cults, and I, they're like, I'm a cult expert. And I'm like, well, I was born into one called the Children of God. And my father led the Italian chapter. And I guess it could be said I am a certified cult expert because of that. I watched him wire people's minds. I watched my father do that. I don't know how to really articulate the fact that I know how to do the opposite, but this is the hard part of it. And it involves making many people mad at you because you have to taser their brain first. There's steps to it. Like when, the Harvey Weinstein expose happened in the New York Times and the New Yorker, and then the Me Too hashtag got popularized and went crazy. And then the media, of course, are referring to it as a movement, as if there's like women with pitchforks coming after everybody, which is not the case. It's a communication tool. It's brilliant. Tarana Burke, who created that. But that was a very painful period for many people who had to go through a lot of self-reflection and be like, and even myself, recategorize things that I'd put away as this experience. And really, I was like, oh my God, it was actually that experience. So there's steps to it. And the first is shock. First is like, ugh. And like tasering your brain and causing a cognitive dissonance and being willing to be hated for doing so, because it's not pleasant. I think my deprogramming might be different than somebody who went to school to learn about deprogramming or how to do that. It's very, very hard to be an expert on a cult if you weren't born into one and grew up on it and lived it. It's fun. It's difficult because it's a closed society. But when you can see the parallel, I watched my father still do it to people's minds even after we got out of the cult. And I don't know. I just have a knack for, and then there was the painful part when the Me Too thing rolled out. That was a lot of shock and ugliness, so much ugliness. Like, ugh, like every day you're like, oh my God. I understand how that would like kind of be traumatizing, but that's the first part of it. Once you kind of taser the mind, you have to kind of repeatedly taser, which is why so many that period I had to say the same stuff. Because when you realize like how brainwashing works on the public, it is through repetition. And it is through like having a particular mandate and how all of a sudden magically every politician is saying the same sentence because they're driving it home on every, media channel possible to achieve their goal, which is ultimately getting people to do what they want. And I just, for me, it's a step. My book, Brave, is the number one way I can articulate it. I, at least in my experience with what people have said after they read it, one, because I think they expect a Hollywood tell-all, and that's not what it is. I write that book from like, what if the product could talk? I was the product. I was sold by Hollywood for many years.
I want to go back to what you said about your dad, that you watched your dad do that. The question is, obviously he was aware of what he was doing, but did he not believe it himself?
My aunt told me something really interesting, his sister. She told me when they were young and they would move a lot, for his dad was in the Navy, so they moved a lot. And that every new town or city they went to, father was a brilliant artist, naturally gifted. And from an early age, he would make homemade comic books starring the kids in the neighborhood. And he would do it before he met them. He would watch them. He would watch how they interacted. And he gave them all special names, different names. And then would give them like storylines. And my aunt said it was wild how in every place they went, all the children would start calling each other by the names he gave them, like acting out storylines. When I was 12, I was very mad at my father. We were very much at odds for a lot of our life. It was a great love-hate relationship, and I found his biggest Achilles heel was that he really needed to be worshipped, and I don't like that in any person or entity. When I was 12, I yelled at him. I was like, you don't even believe in God. You're a rock star and Jesus is your guitar. So that didn't go down very well. But I think some people, like if he was instrumentally inclined, he looked like he should be in Led Zeppelin back in the day. You know what I mean? He looked like a rock star. He was very handsome, very charming, incredibly talented artistically, and just a wild person, a wild thinker. He was super anti the man, you know, and was very proud of being dishonorably discharged from the Navy, you know, all these things. And he was just a funny character, but also he did a lot of damage.
He passed away. Do you miss him?
Very much so.
What do you miss about him?
That weirdo. I miss being in traffic and being on the phone with him about, like, talking about the Sufis versus the Sunnis, or like we would get into a lot of historical debates and whatever region, you know, a lot about not so much religion, weirdly, because his you know, his belief system and his knowledge of the Bible was super invented. But in the Children of God, they had their own Bible. And what I miss about him is his laugh. He sounded like a crazed hyena. At Thanksgiving, we'd all wait for him to laugh, and we'd all like, ah. And he didn't know. He would look around like, why is everyone laughing? I'm like, you. But he had problems with manic depression, and it was untreated. And so that, and then around age 50 something, that settled down for him just naturally for whatever reason. And he did a lot of repair work in his own fumbling way. But, you know, I've had really honest conversations with him in my head since he's died. It's almost developed a second relationship, you know? Yeah.
It's almost like you've developed a second relationship with him.
Yeah. Yeah. And he does not love everything I do, but he loves me sticking it to the man. He hated Hollywood. Hated it. He hated those men. Hated the system. Hated anything glitzy. He was like Mr. Granola before granola was popular. He would put in the 80s, late 80s, he'd be putting our cereal in paper bags. They wouldn't touch plastic, never on a microwave, you know, just really somehow managed to be both on the grid, like a homeowner, but never paid taxes in his life. I think had like stolen license plates from the pound, you know, or something, and put in the back. So he never had insurance, like 8 kids, no insurance, like always just lived by like, I don't want to have any interaction with the system as much as humanly possible.
Look, you mentioned your book. And I want to talk about your book. I didn't know what I was getting into when I read it, and I actually didn't read it. I bought the audio book, and I listened to you. Your book is incredible. I don't read much anymore. I find it difficult. You know, all the distractions. Being a dad, I run my own branding agency. You know, there's not much time. It was really hard for me to read. That said, I think it's compulsory reading, not for every woman, although, of course, but I think it's compulsory reading for every man. It hurt, and it's not a book that isn't an easy read. It's actually a very easy read and easy listen in the way that you wrote it. You wrote it in a way that's very you. It's very much from the gut, but it's hard. It's really hard. And it's not what happened to you with the man, with that man that we spoke about. And at the same time, it's such a inspiration. How on earth did you write that book?
Yeah, it almost broke me, I have to say. That one was really, I had never even written a school paper. And I went to like limited school. I would just write back, I don't want your indoctrination. Thank you. Please give me an F. So I never had any study habits or anything like that. And my goal with it was really, and it is a deprogramming book without people realizing it, because what you just said is what it is. It's cognitive dissonance, but also uplifting. So it causes this way of like, when you can do that, cause extreme reactions, but end it with the last lines in it. I know you can. I know you have it in you just by being brave. You know, it ends on this like great high note and I know that it is it was crafty because I broke the fourth wall in it, which is a term we use, in acting and in theater. And that's like when the actor turns and talks to the audience and it goes back into the character. And I was actually watching Ferris Bueller's Day Off again before I started writing the book. And I was like, oh, that's a really good idea. Because he does that at one point in the end of the movie. He's like, you're still here, leave. And I was like, So I say to the reader in the beginning, I say, my thoughts will rest in your mind. I take that responsibility seriously. So I speak directly to the reader. Then I go into my stories and I, in the middle of it, like go to the person again, the reader or the listener, and posit theories, ideas, or demystifying what is really going on, what's being put in their head and who's doing it, and kind of the cause and effect, if you will. And so it was a hat trick to write sometimes very emotionally painful things. A lot of people filter it through, like when I write about my homeless period at 13, a lot of people see that as really tragic. I was cold and hungry, and that part sucked. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago, I was like, wait a second, no one looked for me. No one even went to the police. No one even put up a flyer. There was no effort to even care. But when I write about breaking into my mother's house during my homeless time to steal Christmas presents, and I go in, I'm like, smells like Christmas, fuckers. Like that's, I guess it's gallows humor, it's just me being funny. But I've always kind of approached things like kind of a Huckleberry Finn adventure kind of thing. So there's levity too. It wasn't all like, a lot of people filter it through this kind of tragic lens, and that's not really the case. I have had an extra helping of bullshit and some hard times, but a lot of us have. Mine just happened to be kind of extreme and kind of relentless in a way, but I would say my life, it's only about 10% of my life in the book. And maybe someday I'll write a book of my adventures, because juxtaposed with the stuff I write about in Brave, which is really, for me, I've always been a fairly private person, despite being, at times very much in the public eye. And I wrote it as a public service. I knew I could help kind of unwire certain beliefs and get people stronger and braver with my random goal of 10%. So I feel like that's doable. And I don't know, it was hard. I was very angry at my father when I wrote that book. I did not go to his grave for 3 years that it took me to write.
And yet, and I spoke to you about this around a week ago, and you expressed surprise when I said it, but like, to me, your dad's death when he died was a big turning point in the book. It was from that point that all of a sudden something changed in his death, where you started to rise. And yet when I told you that, you're like, I've never seen it that way. But
I wrote about it, I guess I just kind of like, time is very fluid for me. I've always had a kind of a fluid, it feels like COVID has changed other people's time clocks to my time settings, which is just random. But you're right. I think a lot of his positive things and his belief system and his anti-government belief system, his that kind of stuff. And then I write about it, I'm on a Tarantino set, and I'm sitting there and I have these alarm bells going off, like, wake up, Rose, wake up. You hate this, wake up. Get back in your body, get back in your body. Because for me, I had no training for acting. I was discovered. It was never like, I want to be an actress. Like, I don't have that personality. I usually just wanted to be left alone. So, but I needed a job. And so I did it. And very quickly, I say in my book, I realized I was trapped on the wrong side of the screen. And I didn't think it'd be as brutal, and I didn't think it'd be as long. But yeah, my dad, definitely, his dying, I think when you have tremendous grief and complex grief, because like 5 out of 6 of his kids ran away before the age of 15. That doesn't happen in a happy home. And yet all of us were on his bed when he was dying in the hospital. So and we all, like, my sister used to try to poison him. She was like 11. She would like smash up. But I was like, Ava, he's a vegan. You're giving him echinacea. You're just making him stronger. And and when I would sneak out to go dancing at my little gay nightclubs when I was like 14, after I came back from being homeless, I lived with him for like a year and a half. And I would leave the front door open and hope someone would come in and just kill him. I was like, go for it. Have at it, you know? And so for all of us who did, I believe, wish him death at various points, and that's not a pleasant thing to say or a pleasant thing to experience, but there's a point where you're like, enough, really enough. But in this period, we didn't talk for like 5 years. And that was right after I did my first movie. And I said, so now you're a professional whore.
See, as I was reading your book, I was saying to myself, someone please give this woman a break. And we all have our problems. I mean, you know, we all have our problems. I have my problems. Everything's relative. And people are listening and they're like, well, I have this. And so what would you say to the people that think you're a little cuckoo? You're a little like...
I didn't grow up in their system. I wasn't formed like them. I did not go to I did not take part in their general education indoctrination, and I have been formed differently. Mm-hmm. I was born with very different ideas. I was raised largely behind walls for the first 10 years, very formative years of my life, with a completely different set of societal rules and beliefs. And once I got shot out into, I will say, your system, not you, the collective, I found it pretty appalling. Well, and I didn't find that it worked for a lot of people. And I do find cuckoo, okay, sure, why not? I mean, what does that mean? It just means that I'm different. And I say in my book also, like, you actually are better off if you're different. Like, you might get plagued by people harassing you and saying mean things to you, or, you know, at times trying to kill you or suppress you or stop you. But my friends are different types of people than more traditional people, I would say. And I just feel like we have more fun, to be honest.
I'm going to challenge you. Well, that's good. Okay. I'm going to challenge you on one thing, which is,
sure.
You say that it's because you're different. Other people might say it's because you're unpredictable and you're dangerous. What would you say to them?
But isn't that different? Their idea of danger is not mine, not my issue. What people think of me is not my fucking problem. It is not my issue. I shut that out long ago. You know, when I was little, I got sent from one school in one state, and I think I talk about this in my book, where people told me I was ugly and hideous every day, and I was like, huh? Okay. And then overnight, I get sent to another school in another state. There I'm lauded for my beauty. I realized very quickly it was so stark. So much of my life has just been so stark, you know, in the extreme parts of it. And it was just such a lesson. I was like, oh, you don't know me and you don't know me. Neither of you factor. So that's a way of helping shield myself. If people say I'm dangerous to what? Their way of thinking, their ideology. What am I dangerous to?
I think
destabilizing.
I think I have a theory about why people think you're dangerous.
Okay.
It's because you're unapologetically yourself, and I think that scares people. I think it does. And you are unpredictable, because if people really were, I mean, this is again just my theory, but like if people really were themselves and not adhering, you know, there are social norms, but at the same time, sometimes you want to just break those social norms, and you can do that in little ways, and then you can do them in big ways. And I think that what you do, to your credit, and it gets you in trouble, is you do it in a big way, and you go at it, and you go at it hard. And I think you get off on it, and not in a bad way. I mean, I think that there's a driving force in you. And what really interests me, and I've asked you this before, is why? Where does this drive to be your absolute self from when you were a kid? I mean, I remember you told me that your dad told you that you were born with your fist raised. And I listened to you talking now, and as soon as I asked you the question, you're like, well, what the fuck? That's not my fucking problem. It's like, fists are up, guns, exactly. So, which is, and I'm curious as to where you think that comes from, and why is it still?
Yeah, the fist up, you mean?
The fight. There's fight in you. There's fight in you, and it was before Weinstein, and it's you.
My whole life.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. My earliest memories, this sounds like mildly crazy, as like I have a very clear image of looking down at Earth. And I drew this when I was little, and just nodding my head and basically communicating that I would accept. And I don't know what that means. I have very clear memories from a very early age. And I think also when you grow up in a thing where you so clearly see society is a cult. There are many levels of cults. There's tiny ones, there's big ones. And when you're in a smaller one, it's so transparently clear when people want you to conform that it's for their own comfort. And I found that objectionable for very early age. And most of my life, and why I do fist up with you, like, you're different, you're weird. I'm like, yeah, maybe you should lean into that. I don't know. Like, I find that kind of judgment by society and by the people that are quote unquote more traditional or normal. I'm like, who the hell are you? Like, seriously, what gives you the right? Like, there was a man at a party that I was at a while ago, and it was an American man. And he kept overhearing my conversation with this young woman. I don't know what I was talking about. Who knows? And he kept butting in. And he kept going, you're so weird. You're so different. I leaned in and I said, sir, please do not take this pejoratively, but you're so normal and you're so average. What does that mean to you? But I wasn't being mean. I was just, by his rationale, then that must mean he's normal and average. And he holds himself up as all that means. And to me, I find normal and average quite offensive. Don't I get a say in that too? You know, I find collective ideas of what people are supposed to be offensive. And I find the idea of what I'm supposed to be because I'm whatever I am offensive. And that I'll fight against. And I fought against conformity every step of the way. In America, when I got sent overnight from the commune to, school in a military base, that was a hardcore fight against conformity, because it is, I can't sell myself out to make you happier in your illusion in the short term. Like, then I lose myself. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I think it's just logic, or at least mine. I don't know what the fight is. I don't know what the drive is. Believe me, I have a lot of moments where I'm like, girl, can't you be normal? Whatever that is. And I don't know what that means. I don't know. And I very often feel like my life is lived like it has been lived. Like I'm walking on a high wire with the winds, pushing at me, and they're paving the road underneath me as I walk. And there's no net. I frankly am surprised I'm still alive. So it's kind of like bonus time. Might as well make even more waves. I mean, I don't know. But I also see the greater good, and I know we can be better. I see so much in humanity. So much. Like, I feel like, honestly, I'm a cheerleader. And if we can just face some hard truths, then we can grow and come out the other side. And I say to my, when you're little, you're hurt, but guess what? You got taller. And that's what growth is. And sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it's not fun, but you're better on the other side. That's for damn sure.
I reached out to a few people and I asked them, if you could ask Rose McGowan a question from you, what would it be? And so I'm just going to ask you questions. And
okay.
The first question is from a woman called Jacqueline de Rojas. She's the head of Tech UK. She's incredible. She's the first person I interviewed on my podcast. You would really get along with her. And she said, I'll just read you what she wrote. One of the things that gives others courage to speak out is being strengthened by the stories and experiences of others, knowing they aren't alone, I suppose. What was it that changed for you in your life that gave you the courage to step out from the shadows into the light? From there outside looking in, that didn't look easy, and the journey seemingly became harder before it got better. Can you share what that was like?
That's a beautiful question, and beautifully asked. I really love to get to know this woman. She sounds amazing.
She is.
It has a beautiful name, De Rojas. It's lonely, I was waiting, to be honest. I was like, come on, someone else do this. Please, please, please. Someone step into this space and take the hit. Because it's going to be a lot of hits, and it's not going to be pleasant, and it's going to be brutal. But finally, I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And I always knew I would, but I didn't know. I always knew acting wasn't the big deal. And if that was not helping, it helped people in some ways in escapism, I suppose. Because we just don't have time for metaphors. And I just felt like every day we're hearing of everybody we know getting sexually assaulted or molested or abused. And I'm like, enough. And I just happen to have inside information. And also I think the years of having to suppress everything and just, the years of people coming up to me in Hollywood, like agents or, hey, getting a good Weinstein scripts lately, just so they could see my reaction. The years of being tortured by a bunch of dickheads that weren't fit to lick your boots or mine. I think it was just, okay, let's do this. And that was righteous anger that fueled that, and I read the autobiography of Malcolm X when I was 11. And I was really inspired. He wasn't just angry. That was not just his thing at all. It's very complex, obviously. But righteous anger does move mountains. And we'd been playing women, especially been playing nice for a very long time. And sometimes you have to not be nice to be effective. And sometimes you have to scare people to be effective. And it doesn't make it fun. But sometimes life is not fun. But that's how we get better. And it was a gamble. Because, believe me, it was down to the wire whether this person would go to prison, whether my tactical approach to strategizing and taking down kind of a domino effect of people, setting that up for years, was a lot. I don't know if I have a great answer for that. I just knew I could. And I knew if not me, then whom.
I think that's a great answer. I'm going to ask you another question.
Thank you.
This is from Cheryl. What could you not live with about yourself if you didn't fight the fight?
Great question. And interestingly enough, Cheryl, I think it's the flip to your question that you asked me, Tana, about what is it that makes you fight? And I think Cheryl's question just answered that. I couldn't live with myself. The collective lie that I think all too many are comfortable in, even though it steals their life, it steals their individuality, it steals their uniqueness, is not a comfortable place for me. It agitates me and I feel kind of claustrophobic. I don't know. I guess I could just as easily have a compulsion to fold toilet paper into little squares. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just a compulsion. What I couldn't live with is being part of the lie. When I really took off the mask of an activist, it was predated, outing Weinstein. It predated all that. It was 2 years before I was at a political event, big political event. And there were no cameras. It was the Republicans and Democrats. And I was volunteering as a lobbyist in DC. And I really wanted to see the halls of power without any cameras. I wanted to see the truth, right? And I got it and I saw it. And that night in this ridiculous situation in New Hampshire where there's the Hillary truck outside. It was the last month of the campaign, Trump truck outside and some of the biggest senators there and both Republican and Democrats there, right? But no cameras. And every table, there was the important man with his blonde bobblehead wife, vacantly staring and going like this. And every man would puff up. It was it was a circle jerk. Very weird. And I think it was Mitch McConnell who gets up and he goes, wow, I'm in a museum, this beautiful museum. Never been in a museum before. 9/11 museum I've been in. That's the level of the brain. But they were all friends behind the scenes. They're all backslapping. These are the ones you see on TV all the time fighting. They're yuck, yuck, yuck. And I just realized that night, if I left there and didn't take a stand, and I had rushing in my body. I didn't know where I was. I'm in a state that's not my own. I was supposed to do no labels. That's the lobbying group. Republicans and Democrats working across the aisle. Bullshit. I just thought and nobody there cared or even noticed me really. But if I didn't take off the mask of an activist that night, I would be one of them and I would know them. So I tricked a PA into giving me the microphone after the governor spoke. And I recorded my speech and it was impromptu and I was very nervous. But I said, I believe you started with higher ideals. I believe you can be better people. And I had and they weren't yanking me. You could hear a pin drop. Oh, and also the first thing I said was quite funny because, I come from Hollywood and I was how does one approach this? And I just went in, but in a really hopeful way, demanding. I'm get out of our bodies, get out of it, da-da. And then but I believe you started with higher ideals and I believe you can be better. And I believe in da-da-da-da. And then eventually they're okay. And I'm thank you. And I walked out of this huge dining event. My arm literally raised slowly, sailing out into the night of God knows where I was. Governor's wife actually picked me up and gave me a ride home. And then I got sent home, of course, immediately. And CNN immediately ran with Rose McGowan angrily storms out of political event. And I'm like, nah, I sailed out of there calm. And I was by myself with the most powerful people in the US. And but I couldn't live with myself. Sorry for taking so long to answer that question. So that's like the biggest
it's actually
thing I could say.
It actually is a good segue into my next question from Avi, who asks a very simple question. He asks, do you think most people are good?
Yes, but I think they can be better.
So you think most people are good?
I think most people are better than they know they can be. I think they've been taught to not go for personal greatness and be just enough and good enough. I don't think good enough is great, but I think we can be great. And I know that, like, I see so much greatness in people that I feel like they're not even necessarily aware that's there because they haven't had to cultivate it and haven't had to push for it. I have no idea why, but I have a lot of hope in the face of no real reason. You know, I had a man get in my face last year, the Bowery Hotel in New York, and he sticks his finger, like, and his veins were popping on him. And he goes, I'm one of the good guys. So I just looked at him and I said, great, be better. Keep going.
A gentleman who didn't want to be named asked this question. What regrets do you have? And how might those regrets inform your new choices? Caveat. If she says none, that's interesting too. But it'll not be forthcoming. All humans have regrets.
I do have regrets. I have regrets when my father said he just couldn't talk honestly about emotions. I have regrets for not forcing him more to have more emotional conversations. I have regrets for being reactive at times because of various traumas. Sometimes, occasionally, if someone scratches me, I respond with a fist, you know. I regret that. I regret that it's like goes into fight or flight. I regret, and I say this in my book, and before the Weinstein meeting, turning to a camera that was following me for a day in the life of Rose McGowan and saying, I think my life is finally getting easier. And I regret accidentally hurting people when I have, or occasionally saying stupid things on Twitter that, you know, get me in trouble. But not trouble, but like, oh, wait, I didn't realize that actually if you contextualize it in different ways, it's not really the best thing to say or best words. But I think we all have that. I do have regrets. My biggest regret is really more just accidentally hurting people's feelings when that happens. But I generally take, if I notice, which I do as much as possible, take responsibility for and apologize. So, but I don't regret having regrets.
Can I play a little game with you?
Okay.
Nice and light?
Okay.
It's called Spitfire Questions. I'm just going to ask you questions and you say what you want and we'll move to the next one.
No pasa nada.
Okay. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
One. Okay. Prince or the Beatles?
Prince.
Favorite politician?
Oh. What is the leader of New Zealand seems pretty cool.
The leader of New Zealand.
I think her first name is Jacinda,
yeah.
But I'm blanking on her last.
No, she's amazing. She's actually in.
She's pretty amazing.
She's in She's That Woman, the film, with you.
Right, and I'm honored by that. Thank you to be in that company. It's pretty great.
She is amazing. Good answer. Forest or beach?
Visually, forest. Ease and laziness, beach.
Good one. Mac or PC?
Mac.
Cat or dog?
Because I like that company, but Jesus. Dog.
And you have a dog?
I do. Pearl. Perlita.
Perlita.
Little Pearl.
A very lovely dog. Okay. Sean Connery or George Clooney?
Sean Connery.
Writing or singing?
Oh, that's a brutal one for me. Singing brings me more happiness.
Yeah, it brings you more happy. We'll talk about that because you're a singer. You have an album. We'll talk about that in a minute. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Speaking or listening?
Obviously speaking.
I love your honesty. That's what I'm telling you. That's what I love about you, your honesty. A lot of people are going to like that one. Liberals.
I didn't say it's the best character trait, but here we go.
A celebrity meeting that blew you away. That just like, oh my God, wow.
Oh, it's true. Do you know who Wallace Shawn is? He's like a famous theater actor. He's in a movie called My Dinner with Andre, and then he was also like in The Princess Bride. He had a lisp.
The guy, the bald
he's
guy.
He's like a character actor. Yeah, a little short.
Inconceivable.
Yeah, I met him. I was at the Chateau Marmont. I was wearing high heels too, and I literally terrified for a man. I like a sprinter in high heels. I sprinted to him and my hands just started waving around uncontrollably. And I'm like standing up to my body like, girl, like you've met some of the biggest people. And I'm like, I just love his books. I think he's brilliant. And he was just so lovely. So I guess him. But there's a lot of dead celebrities I would love to have met.
Name one.
Oh, I would say Robert Mitchum would be quite an interesting one. I think a lot of directors like Billy Wilder, I would love to have met Hitchcock in a way.
Okay. Liberals or conservatives?
For what?
Liberals or conservatives?
I don't know what that means.
Okay. That's a good answer. Wine or beer?
Wine.
Blonde or brunette?
I'm going to say brunette, even though I'm not a blonde.
All right. Okay. Donuts or ice cream?
Gelato?
That counts. Last one. Democrat or Republican?
That's Sophie's choice of neither for me. Actually, maybe that doesn't even work for that answer. I have no answer to that. I ally with none.
Ally with none. Okay. So, music.
Yeah.
You, Planet Nine. You, I mean, you're a former actress. You're a best-selling author. You're a speaker. You're an activist. You're a singer. That completely took me by surprise. Tell me about Planet Nine. And I've listened to it and I loved it.
Thank you. Yeah, Planet Nine is actually, I made it, produced it at the same time I wrote Brave. It was the antidote. I feel like, why do I have to write another book? Why can't the second part of the book be the album? Because it is. It's actually the reward for going through the hard stuff. Because I mixed this album, and I'd sang on a couple of soundtracks before for movies, usually like, never knew how much I love you. Never knew how much I care. Like stuff like that.
Wow.
But
Wow.
not like, yeah, but in Planet Nine, I kind of make my voice sound almost slightly more like space digitized. It's not my full range. It's very much an artistic project on a 432 hertz frequency, which is, it was actually Hitler that changed things to 440 in 1939, even for orchestras. And that's kind of like a hard, and still almost all music is recorded on that, anything you hear on the radio, anything like that. And they tend to mix commercials on 432 hertz for the likelihood that it'll relax you and it'll be more likely to watch them and ingest them. So I mixed it on 432 hertz. I layered in binaural beats. One of my tracks, Lonely House, and I talked, again, it's like talking to the audience, breaking the fourth wall. I'm like, are you lonely on your planet?
Think who wins if you're quiet. That's one of the lyrics from that song.
Thank you. It's my most personal, I would say. Yeah. I was so overwhelmingly lonely in my previous life, like crushing loneliness, crushing. And it's only really alleviated this past year. It
seems like you're healing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm surprised I'm still alive.
You said that a few times. How come?
I have very powerful enemies. I'm suing 4 people in federal court right now in a RICO Act. One of them is a company called Black Cube, which is staffed by ex-Mossad. These are the big boys. And when it was actually, in the New Yorker, Ronan Farrow wrote it, that this lawyer that I'm suing, David Boyce, who's like a preeminent American, very powerful attorney. He argued pro-gay marriage to the Supreme Court in that one. He was Al Gore and Corby Bush's, he was his lawyer, and Bill Clinton's longtime lawyer, Weinstein's lawyer. And he actually went to former Prime Minister Ehud Barak of Israel and asked who he should hire to stop Rose McGowan. And the answer was Black Cube. And so they did. They infiltrated my life through my literary agent and other people. And we're all secretly working there was a bounty on my book, even though the great irony is that I never put his name in there. Because I was like, my words are pretty and your name is ugly. So I'm not going to do that. And the irony was like, I'm never putting, but I knew the articles were coming out first. So I didn't have to. It wasn't about not naming him. It was just that I knew the articles were coming out first. So I didn't have to have it in my permanent, I've had enough of that name for the rest of my life. Thank you. So it is kind of surprising sometimes. I wept the first day I was in Mexico. I was like, they tried to put me in jail for 10 years for a felony, for something I absolutely did not do. And that was part of, every time I was on my way to make a public appearance, which I contractually was obligated to promote, you feel people shadowing me and around me, and I couldn't. There were drones flying behind my windows when I was writing my book. It was just like, filming. It was just like from all sides. The fact that I pulled off that book with that kind of stress on me was no mean feat, really.
Wait, can I ask you for a clarifying question? When you say that you're surprised that you're still here, do you mean because of people that were out to get you, or because of something that you might have done to yourself?
No. Them. Not me.
Them.
People are out to get me because, when you fuck with power, they fuck back. They fight hard. They really come at you. They don't like it. They're not used to it. And I think they don't understand my motivations and I don't understand theirs. So, we're simpatico on that one.
That's tough to hear, that people are out to get you for being
honest.
And, well, it's a little bit more than honest, vocal.
Different.
Unexpected. We don't know how to handle this person. She's not playing by the rules. And in doing so, you inspired a lot of people, which is a badge that I know that you wear with pride. I have a question from Justine Zwerling, another phenomenal woman. And she asked me to ask you, your incredible work around women and sexual harassment has given many who didn't have a voice. What would you say to someone who is currently suffering from being abused?
Before I say that, let me say that it's my work is very much for everybody. And it might surprise people to know that I would say 60% of DMs of people sharing their pain or their stories with me are boys and men, gay and straight. Very often the first time they're ever telling anybody. And, it's very confusing for them because they're, did this make me gay? Or does this mean I'm gay? Identify a different way. And And that's really, there's a lot of baggage that comes along with it. I would say hang on. If you're in an abusive situation where it's active, I was in my family, not my dad, but the other one, like in a domestic violence situation with stepfathers and things like that. We escaped through the night. I don't know. The advice is hang on. It is not your shame. It was never your shame. You can take that shame, put it in a box, leave it on their doorstep. It was never yours to carry. You are pure, you are free, and you're brave for surviving. But someday soon, you'll do more than just survive. You're going to live. I believe that.
When I made the film that I made, which you're in, which is called She's That Woman, with my friend Dana Satterwhite, who you have yet to meet, we wanted to just celebrate women. That was just what we wanted to do. And I'd like to think that we're the good guys. And I know that we could be better, not as men, just as human beings, like you said. Why 10% better? Why not 50% better? But what?
Because each day you can do 10.
That's true.
It's not as overwhelming.
What can men do? Men who are listening right now, men who are decent men, who are good husbands, are good brothers to sisters, who are good fathers to daughters, who are good bosses to female employees. A lot of what has happened over the last few years, it's sometimes difficult because we're all put in the same group. But there is a system, and the system does need some dismantling. And where it hit a lot of guys, I think, is with Mad Men, with the series, because you really saw a very popular TV show that really hit the mainstream and showed how women were objectified and treated. If we're talking about changes in society, that was one thing that hit the mainstream and made guys think, what can guys do to get better? And what can women do to get better? And what can women do to help men get better?
Okay. It's a big question. It's a big question. I think it's really incumbent. First, let me say this. Every single guy says they're a good guy. But if there is an extraordinary amount of rape and abuse going on, and it's not always men that are doing it, but a preponderance, overwhelmingly is, I think it's really incumbent upon men, two things, really to start seeing women and others as human, not as women. They see past their traditional hair, the life they like human, like really work on that, like really work on looking at it as a human, not as a separate category from you. And secondly, when you're together with your male friends, talk about stuff, be honest. This is when I went too far. This is when, or like just parse it apart, like to break it down in your mind. I know there's times when I never like heard anybody like that, but like, I was like, I said something maybe low-key gossipy and I didn't feel good about it. We all know when we do stuff. That's a micro thing. But the big stuff is if everyone's being messed with and then everybody's the good guys, what the hell's going on? It's like there's this giant roving band of ghost rapists. What's happening? It's not like the Harvey Weinsteins are like the very extreme. The Epsteins are very extreme. These are human traffickers. These are people with just sick brains. Structurally, all the normal people that weren't sick around them that held this disgusting system in place, I'd say be brave. I'd say if you have a friend that you see either doing or saying something that's objectionable, say it, risk. And I would say it's the women too. And start looking at how you play a part in upholding the cliche of how women are treated by behaving maybe in a cliche way. Not all of them, but I've seen a lot, like, where I live, there's a lot of, I for some reason spent more time around like women and girls that are not like actresses, or I didn't spend much time around them, but I spent a lot of time around them this last year. And a fair bit seemed to lean into the stereotype of women. And I don't think that's really going to get them anywhere. So I don't have the answer for that. I would say really confront it. And confrontation doesn't have to be this thing. When someone says something messed up around me, and they still do, believe it or not, I'll just be like, I smile. And I'm like, why would you say that? And I just wait. So that's the tool like you can use, a woman can use, anybody can use. When somebody says something, it's like, that's Like, oh, why would you say that? And make them do the work. 'Cause it's not your job to answer why somebody said that. It's their job to work it out for themselves. And that's the way you get free. To really start pulling out the threads of your mind and really studying your belief system and studying, like, men fundamentally are born with this illusion of superiority under them that they don't really want to acknowledge, but it's not their fault. It was in place before their feet hit the ground, more valued. And there's a comfort. It's like a recliner under your ass. It's comfortable, but they kind of suspect that it's not real. If you don't really fight to see ourselves as human first, we can fix a lot of this stuff. But you have to be willing to dive in. You have to be willing to see where you've messed up. And you have to be willing to be better. And not like, again, it doesn't have to be confrontation. Just like, oh, why would you say that? Hold on, I'm going to go get a drink. I'll be right back. Hopefully I'll have an answer when I get returned. And that's what's it. And then I've noticed that works really quite well. And they're like, yeah, why did I say that? That was a weird, or I did say it because of this belief, but actually upon reflection, it's not cool. There's no great answer. I would say really the best part is leaning into spirituality and humanism and just the idea that we always can be better than we're expected to be. You know, we can get by on just enough or good. I notice with movies, they're like, that's great. I'm like, it's good. It's not great.
You're also saying speak.
Yeah. Speak.
Like speak. Don't be silent.
Don't be silent. And confrontation is scary for a lot of people, but it doesn't have to be like a thing like that. That's no fun. Sometimes that happens in life, no matter what you're driving and with the car next to you, whatever. But just why would you say that? I'm very curious.
What's interesting to me is I feel I know you that way, but I feel a lot of people, you know, they can't see what you're doing because this is audio, but you put your fists together when you say it doesn't have to be this, it doesn't have to be confrontation.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people see you as that's the yeah, and it's not just perception. It is, you know.
No, but somebody has to be. Somebody has to be. And there are more than just me doing it. Why not me?
Yeah, why not you? Why you?
Why not me? Why not me? I've known my whole life that this life isn't really for me.
Wait, explain that.
I was raised to be of service. Like, I look at my life as a strange form of volunteer work. And if it means a lot of people are going to get mad at me and they see confrontation, somebody has to take it on the chin. I did an interview a few years ago in Berlin, and the man holding the boom, the mic, had tears running down his face when it was finished. Sorry. And he said 4 words. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, you're the one who lays on barbed wire so others can walk on your back. And I do it because I can. Because I can take it. And somebody, just like somebody had to stand up and say, time out, enough, back up. Let's rethink this whole thing. It's not really working out so good for way too many people. And if everybody in the society is getting hurt, then we have a really sick society. We have a very hurt society, a very damaged society. So my goal also is like, I know how to steal old cars, right? I can hotwire them. But if I can use cameras and mics to hotwire the system and try my own way to make it better, why not? It's a strange hobby or compulsion. I just feel like this, like if I got killed tomorrow, I'm cool. I'm okay. I've left enough work behind. I've left the breadcrumbs. I don't have a death wish, but agitators typically don't do well in the long run.
What I'm hearing from you is that you're leading the life that you want to live. It's your real life. And you're not doing anything you don't want to be doing. You're doing exactly what it is that you want to be doing. And that's a life that's well worth living.
Thank you.
In your book, as a creative, as a writer, as a creative director, one of the things that really spoke out to me was when you say in your book, I recommend creativity and taking a creative approach to every aspect of life. Why wouldn't you want to be on the creative side of everything? And I think that that's something that not a lot of people know about you. I was struck by the fact that you're an artist. Like, of course, you're an ex-actress. You directed a film. I said already, you've written a book, a best-selling book. You're a singer. And there's an artistry about what you do with social media platform in the sense that you have what to say. You have what to express, and you know how. And that to me is an artist. Tell me what you meant by, you recommending that people take a creative approach to every aspect of life.
I would say it's a creative approach. And that, a lot of what got me thinking about it is not just from growing up with a really fabulous artist father who could create. I don't have that gift with hand, but I can do it with camera, and I can do it with sound, and I can do it with words, right? Lyrics or writing other things. And thank you, by the way. But I feel like so many of us get stolen so young. And I repeatedly had this experience in Hollywood where people on the business side would put up their hands, like stop, and wave them wildly and say, if I said, are you an artist, or they're like, I'm not on the creative side. Like it was a disease that was catching and he had to run away from it. And I would just say, well, how old were you when that got stolen? Because I feel like if I was an accountant, I'd be creatively saving people money. I would be creatively doing taxes. I would be creative in whatever. You can be creative, whatever you do. People have this kind of binary notion that I think creativity means you're a writer or a musician, or like if you have something, if someone's paid you to do something creative, then you're sanctioned as creative. I think why does what it says on your business card that you do, why is that more important than like you doing something creative in the off hours, but also applying that creativity to your business world? Because that is creativity. And that people don't realize that they're creative because they, don't paint outside the lines bullshit from such a young age. And they see people that, are sanctioned as artists and think, well, if I'm not that, then I'm not that. But I don't think that's true at all. Everybody has it in them. And if we realize that our emotions, one of my favorite lyrics in one of my songs, it's like this paint box, right, that we have. And the paint is the emotion that we can write with. And then we have these brushes. And so the lyric is only here to paint color on the sun, only here to see the fire. And I believe we're here to live a life that's outstanding and beautiful and colorful and creative. And whether it's creatively raising your children to really open their creative minds, but understanding that it doesn't just mean art, it means a life lived creatively and with intention and with excitement and with, I always say I love tiny mysteries and big mysteries, tiny adventures and big adventures. I get annoyed with the English language. I find it so narrow. Like the words for emotion, happy, sad, mad, glad. What? It's like a 1.5-year-old. What? That's what we got. It's so much more nuanced and it's so much more beautiful. And really the only way to do that, so I urge people, I say like, go look for even the shot. If you're not in a pretty place right now, find something beautiful in it. Like the shadows on your wall from the tree might be making a face. That light, the way you can look at the light can be art. You can start looking at things and really building that creativity inside of you. Because you can see art everywhere, either in nature or in yourself. And I think that's beautiful.
What do you think people don't know about you? Like what's something that, it's a big thing to say, what's something that nobody knows about you, but what's something that like no one really does know about you?
Do you mean more in misconceptions or just no knowledge at all?
Anything. It could be something small and meaningless as well. I don't know.
Yeah. I really like children's food. I prefer it. I tend to order off kids' menus.
Really?
I don't like chewing very much. I find it like just way too much work. I prefer like mushy foods. I grew up with pasta, I don't like a giant steak that's like a Mount Everest for my mouth that I can knock it down.
You literally go to a restaurant and you'll order from the kids menu?
If they have one, absolutely. I don't think anyone knows that.
Well, now quite a lot of people probably know it.
I am a lazy chewer. I don't like chewing very much. I'm like, especially meat. I'm not a vegetarian. I will eat McDonald's, but I also don't think it's real meat. So, skating on that thin line.
Yeah, it's not real meat, but I love it. We have it like at least once a week in my house.
They do the Coca-Cola, like they do it perfectly.
What are you really, really good at?
A lot of things. I'm also really bad at a lot of things.
Well, that's the next question.
I'd say I'm really good at being able to catch the heart of a situation like that. Like a lot of people kind of over verbalize and I'm like, so break it down, edit. Like this is what you're saying. This is what it means. And I think just, I'm a really good visualist with cameras. I think I'm a good storyteller.
Your film, by the way, the film that you made.
Thank you. Dawn.
Yeah. Amazing.
Thank you. I think I'm a good communicator, even if people don't want to hear what I have to say.
Oh, you're good. Oh, you're good.
What am I bad at? Mathematics. Never was taught really anything about that. And it drives me crazy because it's a language I cannot unlock. It used to make me cry. Like now I'm like, whatever, I just don't even bother. I'm bad at sometimes normal small talk, but there's not so many parties, so it's not really an issue anymore. But sometimes I like just freak people out. Like I just do. Like some person will come across me and expecting some cocktail party chit chat, and I'm like, it's about that time we bombed Syria.
Yeah, that's something I've noticed about you in getting to know you is
I can't help it.
No, you go deep. You go deep. There's no chit chat. It's like it's deep shit.
Yeah, I would say I'm pretty bad at like chit chat.
I'm pretty bad as well.
Because I'm curious. Like, I'd rather, I don't know. But other people just want to have a drink and like shut their brain off. So, I feel sometimes bad for terrorizing people a little bit, but I try not to.
Well, it's interesting, like being, my wife and I, you've met my wife. She's really good at chit-chatting. She's like, you put her in a room in any situation, she can chit-chat about anything. Just like lots and lots of small talk. And people see me and maybe see me as friendly and, branding guy and good at communications and everything. But I don't know how to small talk.
It makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, like
does it make you uncomfortable? Like
I just think I'm really bad at it, and when I'm bad at something,
like, why are we talking about this? It doesn't. And sometimes it's fine. So I talk about stupid, little things too. I'm sure not everything is obviously. I'm so deep. It's not what I mean, but the ease of it is something I'm not at ease with.
Well, I can talk about meaningless, mundane, small, talky things with friends of mine. But I find it very difficult to do with people that I don't know because I don't care about those things. I just don't.
Do people ever want to run from you? They're like, man, I was just coming to have a simple cocktail and check my brain.
I think I can intimidate people with, like I when I talk to people, and you've probably noticed this about me, I look in their eyes. Like I don't look away. I don't look down. I'm looking at they're just like, what are you looking at me for? I'm like,
they're like, and their eyes are going all around. Like, stop looking at me.
Yeah. They get uncomfortable.
You're seeing into my soul.
Yeah. That's actually, that's what some people say.
That's the point. Yeah.
I hold the mirror up, which is terrible. Where did you bomb? And what did you learn from it?
I would say more in the financial world. My failure is that I don't, and that's something I'm currently wrestling with, is I really don't know how to market myself. I have no clue. Like, I'd always been part of campaigns that other people set up, and I was just like, now you go forth and you're part of it, like you're the product. But doing it for myself, in terms of most of the failures have been like, you dummy, why did you spend 5 years in a long distance relationship with a lame-o when you could have bought property? Stuff like that instead. Like, we've allocated money. I'm not a wild spender, but, smoke some weed in Amsterdam and buy a 10,000 euro outfit made of sequins that looks like something Missy Elliott would wear. You might consider that a bomb. But usually, I don't know. What's yours?
Me? What's my biggest failure? I think sometimes I feel the need to be heard. And when I'm not heard, and it goes back to family, like the little boy inside, when I'm not heard, I make myself suffer and I can't snap out of it. And every time that happens, I feel like I'm failing. All those little failures add up to an anxiety. I don't know if depression is the right word, but that can get me really down. And so I think that those are little failures which, where I disappoint myself. I think that's what a failure is, when you're disappointing yourself. But it all goes down to something much deeper that I'm working on. Hey, there's something I didn't actually ask you, and I don't know if you feel comfortable talking about it, but you tell me. You're in love.
I am. He's such a mensch.
He's a mensch. That's the word that we've been using.
Such a mensch.
Why is he a mensch?
I call him 3% alien because he's really not like most people that are humble, like say I'm humble and ergo they're not, but he really just lives his life so ethically without making a thing of it. And he just really cares about other people's safety and their enjoyment and that they're happy, not in an obsequious way that's like on people. He's like a tree trunk. He's like a root. And he's just solid, and he loves my dog, and he loves me, and he doesn't fully comprehend my strange life. He comes from a very, like a middle-class northern Mexican family that was raised with just a lot of love, like, and quite opposite from me in a lot of ways, I would say. And I think there's a purity to him that he's never... And just the lack of ego is so refreshing. If I say you're such a good human, he's like, I'm okay. I can be better. And I'm like, we all can. Yeah.
How did you?
And I'm extra. I am a little extra. I mean, I'm pretty chill in relationships. I'm not high maintenance. I don't ask for things. I don't want anything. But, you know, my brain can be a little on fire at times in different ways than someone who's raised more traditionally.
Well, how did you meet him?
We met when we both turned and said, I really don't like the music this DJ is playing. And we put on, actually, a Prince song.
No, don't do that to me. Are you serious?
Yeah, Kiss.
Ah.
Yes.
I miss that, man.
Whoa. I cried when he died. I bet you did too.
Everyone who knows me knows that I love Prince. I'm in my community anyway. And when he passed and it became public news, I was with my eldest son, and he was 3 years old at the time, and he had fallen asleep on my lap. And all of a sudden, my phone started buzzing like crazy. And there I was receiving the most awful news for me, because he's one of those people that really just influenced my life. But I was with my son who was sleeping, and I had my hand on his head, and I was just like, caressing his hair. And that's how I found out in the most peaceful and beautiful of ways. But yeah, I was pretty crushed.
That's a beautiful and horrible moment.
Yeah, it was a horrible moment that I'm so grateful that my son was there with me. And I was just looking at him, and I was like, as awful as this is, and as devastating as it is, and you felt the energy. I felt the energy leave my body in a way. It's someone who influenced me in a huge way, and actually really believed in his work ethic and his values as a human being. But then to be there with my son, which was asleep and so beautiful, I just thank God for that. But, so you met. So we talked about me. But you were talking about. So you met at a Prince song. I mean, you.
Yeah. Kiss.
Wow.
Yeah, and we've been together now for like 9.5 months, and it's just. I was really not interested in meeting anybody. Not in a way that I was anti it. Just I was so at peace with just getting my own life back and or getting my own life. Period. And my dog, and just. I was perfectly happy. And he's just added an inimitable level of peace and stability in a lot of ways. And the craziest part about it is that when I came down here with my dog, Pearl, was like 2.5 months old at the time, and her fur would grow to the floor. She's hypoallergenic, and I'm like, that's not a look. I'm like, who on earth in this small town in Mexico am I going to get to groom my dog? The hell? And in the past, I'd gone out with some very powerful or well-known people or whatever. After a month of being together, Yvonne and I found out that his ex-wife and him owned grooming facilities, and that he knows how to groom dogs, and he'll do it like once, like every 3 weeks, and takes like 3 hours, and loves her, is so patient and loving, and like, what? I don't need someone to fly me around on a private plane. But the bonus that you can groom my dog is like insane.
Okay, I've got 2 quick questions, and then we can wrap. Okay. The 2 questions are: What's next for you? Like, what's Rose McGowan going to do?
Well, I bought land where I live, and I'm building a dome on it, and it's going to be called the Center for Inner Travel. And because the album Planet Nine shifts trauma, because it's like medical music almost. Music is medicine, because trauma receptors stay in one area of the brain, and the 432 hertz and the binaural beats, especially like layer, they go back forth, and that's something in EMDR and binaural beat therapy, sound therapy, they use to move trauma and to move pain. That typically, that's why when you get triggered, it's like it's just happened again. So I was like, why does wellness music have to kind of blow or sound like you're, getting a spa massage all the time? So I'm building this dome, and all the visuals that I've been filming for the last 6 years will be projected on the ceiling with people laying in these kind of half pods down on the ground, and a 360 sound experience. And it's like a 40-minute experience. That'll be like a 2-3 hour block. And I have never having done this before, I just love domes. I love circles. I love orbs. I love planets. So that's what I'm doing. And in the jungle, and I'm leaving most of the land as the land. There's a monkey family that lives there, so they'll be safe. There's a lot of development going on here right now, so I'm trying to only have a 12% footprint on the land. And so that's what I'm building towards. I just got the designs in from the architect right now.
Wow.
And doing a video series with RT News, Russia Today. And that'll probably earn me a lot more people that are mad at me. But, well, here we go. Buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy night, as Betty Davis said. And, the other thing is, I know someday I want to write a book of my adventures, but I just don't feel like it yet. And I guess just trying to figure out how to earn a living. Oh, I'm doing a podcast. I am doing that. I've recorded 6 episodes. It's with a British company. One of them is one episode is about Britney Spears. The next is about the famine in Yemen. It's kind of inspired by George Carlin's Brain Droppings. He was a hero of mine. I love George Carlin very much.
For the people who don't already know, where can they keep up with you? I want to, before you answer that question, I want to say, brave, go out and get the book, because it really is, it's really an extraordinary book. It's not easy. It's very easy to read, but it's such an important book, and I really commend you for writing it. So that's one thing that I want to say. But you, where can people keep up with you and your shenanigans?
So it's at Rose McGowan. Twitter, I go quite hard. It's a tough environment, as we know, and I'm shadow banned and suppressed on there. So maybe you'll see a tweet of mine, maybe not. Instagram, obviously, sometimes Facebook, not that much. I recommend Brave, the audiobook, because when people hear my voice,
sure,
it doesn't read as hardcore, or as I make fun of things too. And there's levity involved, and it's not just hi, my tragic life story, but I really am. And probably one of the things I'm proudest of is that it was voted Audible's top 10 of the year out of 1.6 million audiobooks. So that was really nice. And it has a little appetizer trailer for my music at the beginning and at the end that kind of sets the mood. So I would say that. I don't know. I hope to just continue being a cheerleader for the world in my own weird, semi-confrontational way. And I hope everybody listening to this, that we all do what we can to the best of our abilities. And sometimes if that causes a little agitation, maybe it's for the greater good. We can all be that way too. Don't forget, you are all created too.
I couldn't agree more. And I think if there's anything that I wish, it's for your continued happiness and growing happiness, and to continue just being who you are. And for the people that maybe misunderstand you or don't know you, then I hope that they know you a little bit better now.
Thank you for a lovely human time. It's been nice being human to human with you. And thank you again, and your partner Dana for She's That Woman, because I remember finding out who made it, and I'm like, whoa, 2 men, whoa, badass. So badass, go you, go him, and thank you for being a cheerleader too.
Thank you. I hope you share it.
Okay, I will. Have a great night.
Well, that's it. Thanks for listening to I'm That Podcast. Go ahead and subscribe to the show on iTunes, and if you'd like, leave a rating and review. Tune in for the next episode. and see you soon.